Does it matter that Liquid Death swung on a mist in its first attempt at extending its platform beyond the ready to drink beverage category? I assure you that baseball reference will make more sense a bit later in this content. Firstly, though, if you checked out my beverage identity crisis content from last week, I had originally intended to include these Liquid Death format extension insights in that piece, but there was a bit too much strategic nuance that I believed would create confusion with the previous content's central focus. So instead, I figured I'd give this important recent Liquid Death business activity its own content because there's honestly a lot to unpack learnings wise that I believe can be valuable to my community of CPG industry leaders. Let's start though with the recent Liquid Death product announcement that was called Death Dust. In typical Liquid Death fashion, the beverage brand shared this entertaining video in mid February to promote it had created a new powdered electrolyte drink mix that would help its fans rise from the dead and no longer be flesh eating zombie psychopaths after a long night of partying.
Oh no! She's eating Ted!
We gotta take her head off.
She partied pretty hard last night. Maybe she's just dehydrated. She needs new Liquid Death Electrolyte Death Dust. Here. Wow! I feel so much better.
So much better. Death dust, rise from the dead. Don't be a zombie, be a human instead. Oh, death dust, rise from the dead. You're not a zombie, you're just dehydrated.
New Liquid Death Dust, packed with essential vitamins and electrolytes, will bring you back from the dead. Try it today.
Death dust, rise from the dead. Zombies are bad, electrolytes are good. Death dust.
Death Dust comes in three flavor variants. Each were formulated with the approach of them being lightly and naturally sweetened and flavored. Liquid Death also leveraged its known and beloved flavor IP from its flavored sparkling water SKUs. The Death Dust powdered hydration supplement stick packs were launched on Amazon and direct to consumer only. And I bring up some of these kind of minor strategic decisions because they provide context for insights that I'll provide in the next section. But before I dive deeper into those, let me explain some reasons why, at least I think, that Liquid Death even decided to extend product formats. From a marketplace perspective, dollar sales for sports drink mixes were up 53% year over year for the last 52-week period ending March 26th of 2024. So that's obviously an attractive adjacent category for a beverage brand with the platform strategy friendly tagline of Murder Your Thirst. In fact, the Liquid Death model seems to revolve around selecting beverage categories that lack fun, irreverent brands and focusing on taking share through its version of the media company that sells X game plan. And even though the billion-dollar sports hydration powder market is filled with heavy hitter brands owned by the likes of Unilever, PepsiCo, the Coca-Cola Company, and KDP, the unit economics of these products in terms of categorical gross margins, but especially net margins, are still quite desirable to Liquid Death that's tasked to make money on moving around heavy ass water. Now, for those pundits that spewed hate when Death Dust launched, talking about Liquid Death's profitability struggles and how this was a Hail Mary type move to save the company, come on, guys, let's be real here. Liquid Death has only been around since 2019, achieving triple digit growth for the last 3 consecutive years and generating $263 million in retail sales last year. It's in over 120,000 retail locations and has become the fastest growing brand in the water, flavored sparkling water, and tea categories. But more than those sales metrics, you must ask yourself, how did Liquid Death last month raise another $67 million in outside capital, some of which from its supply side partners, and is now valued at $1.4 billion? Oh, and they did that during one of the worst recent periods of CPG financing history. My answer to how Liquid Death can pull off that feat surrounds its ability to achieve the rare feat of successfully building a truly distinct and memorable brand. Within the CPG industry, you'll hear a lot of entrepreneurs say, our CPG brand this or that, but few ever get past being simply a company that attempts to sell undifferentiated products. Yet, when you can sell a product that also brings someone an extremely desirable emotion like belonging or connection or status, you've done something special. That is why Liquid Death has the power to break through those macroeconomic pressures. But this isn't just another one of those I love Liquid Death's brand strategy pieces of content. You've heard that story way too many times already. Instead, I wanted to analyze nuanced strategic aspects about the Liquid Death beverage identity crisis and provide insights to the CPG community. So let's start with the notion that the CPG industry innovation presents a paradox. And even though innovation can obviously come in many different forms, I'm going to focus only on product development. This is mostly because physical products are the central aspect that most people hyperfixate on when talking about the CPG industry. Consumers continue to demand new CPG products. To meet that continual consumer demand for newness, CPG companies have gotten innovation drunk, and it has caused a proliferation of products and brands. Out of the tens of thousands of new CPG products launched each year, somewhere around 90% won't survive their first few years in market. So, while product development and innovation in general is highlighted as a universally important growth driver for CPG companies, it can also be a resource intensive process that results in questionable return on investment. So, how does a CPG brand like Liquid Death better manage its innovation risk? While the brand's flagship still water in a can remains its top selling individual SKU, Liquid Death's sparkling water and tea lines combined are now more than half of its total revenue. So Liquid Death has probably done better than most new CPG brands, but that doesn't mean that they have been perfect. In fact, a month after launching Death Dust, Liquid Death realized after getting customer feedback that it made a mistake flavor wise with the powdered hydration product. Liquid Death quickly discounted the remaining stock and announced it would launch an improved version within 60 days. So let's break that decision down a bit. Going back to some of those like seemingly boring strategic details I shared earlier, Liquid Death decided to use flavor names from existing products. This is what I'd call a double-edged sword move. Current fans of the Liquid Death flavored sparkling water SKUs would have a higher likelihood of purchasing these known hydration supplement flavors, thus driving incremental growth. But if not done correctly, meaning not reaching flavor parity, then you won't have high repeat purchases at best and lose customers to the entire brand at worst. So, this decision speed of iterating on the Death Dust product is important because Liquid Death was managing these post purchase business risks. And then a key part of how Liquid Death quickly learned about this poor product feedback and why they were able to fix it so quickly is another important point. As mentioned earlier, Death Dust was launched on Amazon and direct to consumer only. And that allowed them to utilize lean startup ideologies and leverage this beautiful, unappreciated value of an online marketplace like Amazon. Liquid Death knew they could experiment fairly cheaply with supplement powders through this go to market strategy. Moreover, it could get actual paying customer feedback loops that aren't just some pointless test market work or paid consumer surveys. And then, based on that feedback, Liquid Death could iterate product without incurring the huge costs from large retail inventory swaps. It's also important to note that brands like Liquid Death know just how powerfully important this fan feedback is and that you shouldn't be afraid of it, as even the bad stuff said loudly is coming from a place of really wanting to be heard. No company is perfect, and that iteration based on feedback is actually a powerful customer intimacy building strategy. And then finally, Amazon is the most competitive shelf in retail. If you can win on there, you honestly should have the confidence to put more resources into the product innovation and take a big swing across your entire sales channel strategy where at least the product, or in this case, the format, is relevant. And maybe that's the perfect transition to bring in that analogy of baseball from the introduction. If you're an ex player and a lifelong fan of the sport like me, you might have noticed a huge strategic shift in today's analytics era of baseball. Historically, strikeouts were embarrassing for players, and they focused on taking quality swings at the plate. But now, strikeouts are commonplace as big swings, especially by star players, create more run production through home runs. Analytics in baseball changed the sport, just like analytics are changing the CPG industry. In an era of constant limited launches and noise, customers are now conditioned to forget about these strikeouts quicker than ever. And so CPG brands will continue taking bigger swings more often. But I just kind of wanted to end with some quick final thoughts. Liquid Death might not think that the Death Dust launch was a big swing, and by categorical size, it wasn't. But we are still talking about a relatively young CPG brand that missed on its first format and I'd argue functional beverage expansion. Does it matter? Will it affect Liquid Death in any meaningful way? Maybe. In terms of, let's call it the conventional CPG space, I admit that I rarely pay much attention to individual founders or CEOs, even if it seems like my ear is to the ground on everything. Instead, I study the big CPG blocking and tackling operational stuff, strategic frameworks and playbooks, how they are adapting to changes in the marketplace, and all of that type of stuff. This is mainly because I see it as more of a team thing over an individual. But Mike Cesario has been a bit of an outlier for me on all fronts. From that first Deadliest Stuff on Earth video in early 2019, I've been vibing with how he's built a strategic moat from his unique storytelling ability and rarely misses on the cohesiveness of any of these small details within the countless brand touchpoints that must be replicated millions of times monthly during the CPG sales cycle. But Mike Cesario is moving into my world now, and while I agree that there's little to no comedic centric brands in hydration supplements, I think the notion that these brands only market to health nuts would overlook what's happened over the last handful of years. Where Liquid IV took one small step, Prime took one giant leap forward in democratizing the hydration category. These brands and others, to a smaller extent, I guess, brought in new mainstream demographics that weren't originally passionate about the hydration category. Does that mean there isn't space for Liquid Death to target more of those beer drinking and junk food eating consumers and turn them into hydration category lovers too? No. But I'd argue the ocean might not be as blue as the Pantone used on the armless Palmer tea flavor, but I do think with some tinkering to the strategic game plan and patience, Liquid Death will successfully become that platform beverage identity crisis brand it appears to want to be. But I hope you enjoyed this YouTube video. If you did, consider hitting that like button to support me. Also, help me get to my new short-term goal of 4,000 subscribers by hitting that subscribe button. I'd love to see you join me on this journey, but we need to fix the fact that slightly over 90% of you at this point, I think, that are watching this YouTube video are not subscribed, and that makes me extremely sad. But I do want to thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next one.